small game hunting season began mid-September.
It was killed this week. The eyes are still bright. You can't get fresher. It's October, small game season.
Wild game's available all year round in jars, but towards the end of the year, it's served fresh.
Typical dishes on menus in brasseries and restaurants will include wild boar casserole or stew, jugged deer, roast venison, red deer steaks, and also wood pigeon, which is often served in Parisian brasseries.
The highlight of French gastronomy during small game season is lièvre, which is hare, à la royale. There are two ways of preparing this dish, both very famous, and they date back to the reign of Louis XIV.
There's the Senator Couteau, which is a basic recipe and was created for Louis XIV by his chef because the king didn't have any teeth and he liked game. The hare is stewed and cooked very slowly, so the meat completely breaks apart and you don't have to cut it. You can eat it with a spoon.
Complètement détaché, vous n'avez pas besoin donc de le couper, vous le mangez carrément à la cuillère.
But the more complicated recipe for this legendary French dish is called alibab. The hare is stuffed and the recipe requires 48 hours preparation time.
Around 30 to 40 years ago, it was a very popular dish on menus during hunting season. There is a revival of long, slow cooking in a number of restaurants at the moment, which is great. We're going back to basics, which I think is fantastic.
And restaurants across France have been organising special lièvre à la royale evenings. Back in mid-October, this Vineyards restaurant in Narbonne served both versions of the famous dish. Over to Paris, where the Association des Parents des Lièvres organised a tasting session for 30 or so lucky guests.
Our aim is to work out which is the original recipe. There is not just one actual recipe, so we have decided to try them all, and we asked the chef to only use French hare.
And this time it's small game enthusiast Cédric Lefebvre who's taking on the challenge. We met up with him in his kitchen as he prepared the more difficult hare recipe, the alibab stuffed hare.
For the stuffing, we need shallots, chervil, foie gras, cèpe mushrooms. You can use truffles, but I make it with cèpes, the hare giblets and armagnac.
And of course a whole hare which the chef will skin, clean and debone.
You can buy it already prepared, but it's better to do it yourself. That way you can make sure there are absolutely no bones remaining. It's meticulous work. The difficulty lies in lifting up the skin without piercing it. Otherwise, the stuffing will seep through. You have to take it off without piercing it, and this is where that could happen. Exactly. Deboning in itself is pretty standard work. Okay, the deboning method applies to other animals, and not just the hare. But in this instance, you have to be very, very precise. And once you've got the hang of it, you achieve results like this. Great work. Well done, chef.
This step of the recipe took 10 minutes. The deboned flesh is then wrapped around the stuffing.
I didn't explain everything that goes into the stuffing, but you get the idea.
It's left to stand at a cool temperature for 2 days and is then fried before being baked in the oven for 10 minutes. It's served with a sauce made using wine and hare's blood.
Bon Appetit. The stewy part has a pretty gamey flavour. It had a very strong taste. I really enjoyed that. It's a welcome change from the rather basic flavours that are popular at the moment.
Every chef has a different way of preparing hare. It's a very personal thing.
I like tasting the two hare recipes at the same time to compare. It's quite rare they are served together though. Generally speaking, chefs use the alibab recipe, and I'm happy with this version, which is a more classical version of the Senator Couteau recipe.
And with this legendary recipe enjoying a comeback, the time has come to dispel certain prejudices about game meat.
A lot of people used to say, no, it's too gamey, I don't like it. This has never been my experience. Game meat used to be hung too high, but this was around 100, 150 years ago. Hare can also be casseroled. Small game isn't expensive. A pheasant costs around 10 to 15 euros at the market, the price of a chicken. A partridge costs between 5 and 10 euros. These are very reasonable prices.
And a whole hare will set you back around 40 euros. Something to bear in mind as small game is a very popular choice of dish over the Christmas period.